So guys, lots of rumours breaking today about Anthony Joshua versus David Price. And I guess realistically, this is a fight that we have to at least concede is conceivable. Looking at it logically, we believe that Eddie Hearn, Matchroom, Sky, Team Joshua have put offers out to Kubrat Pulev, to Bermain Stavern, to Hughie Fury, to Vladimir Klitschko. Multiple offers have gone out, and for whatever reason, none of those fights have been made. So here we are. It's actually late November now. I'm not wearing my watch. I believe it's the 20th of October today. So we're in late October. AJ's date is December the 10th. Now, that gives us, 11 days left in October, 30 days in November, and 10 days in December till fight night. So we are approximately 50 days from fight night. That's just over 7 weeks away from fight night, and we're without an opponent. And some of the names who you'd certainly throw into the mix are out of the running. You know, Klitschko, Hughie, Bermain, Kubrat. You know, these fights seem to have not come to fruition after the offers have been made. So it looks like Anthony Joshua versus David Price is one of the negotiations in play. Certainly Sky have put various articles on their website today suggesting that David Price is up for taking the fight, and one would assume this is a fight that Eddie Hearn would be looking at. Now, from a hardcore boxing perspective, there's going to be a certain section of fans who don't like the fight. They view David Price as a very, very easy mark. They view David Price as a glass chin, and they see it as a 1 or 2 round for Joshua. And I'm not necessarily saying that those people are wrong. What I am saying is, from Eddie Hearn's perspective, Price is a fight that makes sense. Price is highly marketable. For a start, he's better known to the British public than the likes of a Kubrat Pulev or a Bermain Stavern. I'm not saying Price is a celebrity in the UK, far from it, but Price, you know, he's fought in the Olympics. He used to be a bit of a hype job. He's at least a well-known face in the British boxing scene. Price is marketable for other reasons as well. A fight between him and Anthony Joshua would be a fight between 2 Olympians, both of whom medalled. Price is a very, very big puncher. It could be branded as a battle of big punches. Price is also a massive, massive guy, and you know what a domestic heavyweight class is like. It always generates interest. Just look at Dillian White versus Joshua last year. 2 British heavyweights squaring off, 2 big guys, 2 big punchers, never really fails to generate interest. So Price is a marketable fight against Joshua. Price could be perceived to be a substantially easier fight than a Kubrat Pulev, but it's a more marketable fight, and even though the hardcore may be less interested, my personal belief is that the fight would do more pay-per-view buys than a fight against Bermain Stavern or a Kubrat Pulev. I think that domestic class, that power punching sell that would come with the fight is something that would generate real substantial interest. Now, there's 2 schools of thought here. A lot of people are reacting to this saying, well, I guess this isn't a bad fight if we consider that Klitschko just ducked Anthony Joshua. You know, people are being very, very charitable there from my estimations. They're saying, you know, Joshua and Hearn had their heart set on the Klitschko matchup, and now that Klitschko has ducked, this is not a bad follow-up fight. You know, for me, my personal belief, and no offence intended, is that anyone who believes Vladimir Klitschko ducked Anthony Joshua needs their head tested. People are going to say, oh, haven't you heard the rumours about what Anthony Joshua did to Klitschko in sparring? You know, oh, how is Klitschko going to live with Anthony Joshua after he got old overnight against Tyson Fury? You know, let's have it right. Vladimir Klitschko is not afraid of Anthony Joshua. Vladimir Klitschko is a guy who has fought at the highest level in the sport for well over a decade. He's faced big names. He's faced big punchers. He's faced guys like, you know, if you look at who the most proven power punchers are in the sport at the minute, Alexander Povetkin, you know, arguably he's probably the most proven power puncher. Klitschko's been in with him. Klitschko's been in with guys like David Haye, Kubrat Pulev, Samuel Peter. You know, it goes on and on and on the list. You know, Vladimir Klitschko is not scared of Anthony Joshua. That's not to say it's not a competitive matchup, but Klitschko's a guy with multiple options on the table. You know, he's highly ranked in many governing bodies, etc. To say that a guy with options like Vladimir Klitschko is ducking because he maybe doesn't want to fight for a single title in Anthony Joshua's backyard on a bill promoted by a different promoter, I think is very, very harsh and disrespectful given the career that he's had. You could also take the pessimistic viewpoint, which is that Eddie Hearn may have always known that the WBA would be unlikely to sanction a Joshua versus Klitschko fight. And as a result, he was simply using Vladimir Klitschko's name to build hype for his fighter, in a similar manner to the way Eubank Golovkin created hype for Chris Eubank Jr. If you followed that cynical viewpoint, you could say that knowing he was always going to announce a fight with a lesser opponent like an Eric Molina or a David Price, he created the illusion that the Klitschko fight was so close, mainly in order so that when a fight with a Molina or a Price was announced, people wouldn't complain because they would say, oh, you know, they did try to make the Vladimir Klitschko fight, to be fair to them, it's not their fault. And, you know, I know that's cynical, I know that's pessimistic, and I'm not necessarily saying that I sit in that camp either. But what I will say is, for me, it was seemingly mysterious that the Klitschko camp were pretty quiet throughout the period of time when it was suspected that they would be fighting Anthony Joshua. You know, I've seen various statements recently that have come out from Team Klitschko, and Klitschko's stance seems to be very, very clear-cut, which is that they wanted to fight for the belts. Not necessarily Anthony Joshua, but for the belts. So it kind of hinged on that thing as to whether Eddie Hearn was ever going to be able to get that bout sanctioned. I don't know. But regardless, I guess it doesn't really matter. We're left in a position where, as I say, we're 50 days from fight night, 5-0, 7 weeks away. 7 weeks is, I don't want to say it's short notice, but I actually think that any less than 7 weeks is borderline short notice for a heavyweight title fight. I would say for a heavyweight title fight, 8 weeks would be a decent period of notice. Now, if you're the kind of guy who's in the gym 365 days a year, if you're the kind of guy who doesn't blow up in weight when you're outside of the ring, 7 weeks is very manageable. You know, you wouldn't want to see Tyson Fury in his current position fighting in 7 weeks, but a guy like Anthony Joshua, a guy like Vladimir Klitschko, you know, these are guys who are consummate professionals, these are guys who are in-shape athletes all year round, and potentially they can get ready for a fight of this nature in 7 weeks. Similarly, a guy like David Price, you know, we know he's been relatively active, we know he's been ticking over in the gym, he's had 1 or 2 tune-up fights against bin men recently, and potentially a guy like David Price, you could bring in on 7 weeks. And I wouldn't be surprised if this Price fight gets made. The fact that Sky are putting articles about it on their website, you always wonder if that's a way of testing the waters and laying the foundations to announce a fight like this. I think the other thing to factor in is, even though Price is quite a recognisable name, what do you think the biggest payday of David Price's career has been today? And that's a serious question. I don't know the answer, by the way, so leave it in the comment section below. But seriously, what do we think the biggest payday David Price has received in his career to date is? You know, how much do you think Frank Maloney was paying him to fight Tony Thompson? How much do you think the Sauerlands have been paying him to fight Erkan Tepe and to fight those bin men recently? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer, but if I had to pull out a guess from nowhere, I find it hard to believe that, you know, David Price has ever fought for £250,000. You know, I find it hard to believe that he's ever fought for that figure. Now, I may be wrong. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm giving you a gut instinct there. But what I'm getting at is, I don't believe David Price has earned money in his career to date that will allow him to be completely set up for the rest of his life without taking alternative employment. That's my suggestion. And I think the Anthony Joshua fight represents that for him. You know, Price is the kind of guy who is always going to be risking a loss if he steps up to sort of top 50 level. So bearing in mind that he's always rolling the dice with a loss, he may as well take a fight at the very, very top level and expect a huge payday from it. I guess from Eddie Hearn's perspective, it's a very, very winnable fight for Joshua. It's a fight where Joshua would start a heavy favourite. Price, you would have to assume, given his potential lack of massive paydays in the past, could be an affordable opponent, and I actually think it's a more sellable fight given that power dynamic, given the domestic bust-up dynamic. And that's the thing, you know, in terms of picking a winner in this fight, it really is hard to side with anyone but Anthony Joshua. Joshua looks the far superior operator. But you've got to say, it would be you know, can't blink fight that. We know David Price has legitimate power. We know Anthony Joshua's defence has at times been open. We know that he's been stopped in the amateurs. We know the rumours that David Price knocked him out in sparring, which will of course be used to hype the fight even more. And it's a fight where, whilst Joshua would be a heavy favourite, and whilst of course you'd end up picking Joshua, the fact that Price has that typical David Price puncher's chance in any fight would make it an edge of your seat fight whilst it lasted. So I think it's marketable, and even though people out there are going to hate on the fight and, you know, claim that it's not a good fight, don't pretend you wouldn't be watching. Let me know your thoughts on this, people. Is this fight going to happen? Should it happen? Who else would you like to see in there out of the realistic options in the IBF top 15? And what percentage chance you give David Price of upsetting the apple cart here? Let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, take the time to subscribe. And yeah, thanks for joining.